I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. It started in a place so ordinary I didn't clock it as important at the time. Her kitchen. Past 10. The house quiet in that way that only happens after someone else's life has gone to sleep. I was there because her son, my friend, had left his jacket behind after dinner. I told him I'd drop it off. He said just leave it on the porch. I didn't. She opened the door in socks, holding a mug with both hands like it was keeping her steady. "You're Adam, right?" she said, tilting her head, not quite smiling. I nodded, already embarrassed that she knew, already aware of the way my shoulders pulled back without asking me. "Thanks for bringing it," she said. "He loses things." The kitchen light was softer than the hallway. Yellow. Tired. There was a clock ticking too loud for the size of the room. I stood by the counter while she poured hot water over a tea bag, dunking it, watching the color bleed. She asked if I wanted anything. I said no. She poured another mug anyway and slid it toward me without comment. We didn't talk about anything that mattered. The weather. Her son's new job. The neighbor who parked too close to the driveway. She leaned against the counter when she spoke, arms folded loosely, one hand absent-mindedly rubbing her wrist. I kept noticing her hands, the way they moved slowly, like she had nowhere to be. At some point she laughed, quiet, surprised at herself, and covered her mouth. "Sorry," she said. "I don't laugh much anymore." I didn't know what to do with that, so I folded the napkin on the counter into a square, then into a smaller square. "It's fine," I said, which wasn't an answer to anything. I've been lonely for a while then. Not in a dramatic way. Just pauses. Drafts of texts I never sent. Sitting on my bed with my phone face down, like it might accuse me of something. I'd gotten used to being the extra person in rooms. The one who listens. She asked what I was studying. I told her. She remembered. Weeks later, she'd bring it up like it mattered. That night, she just nodded, eyes on mine a beat longer than necessary, like she was deciding whether to say something else. "You can stay a minute," she said, not looking at me. "If you want." I stayed. The temptation wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It showed up in the space between her sentences, in the way she didn't rush to clean the counter, in the way I didn't check my phone. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. Her hand brushed my arm. Accidental, probably, but neither of us apologized. Outside, the air was cool. She stood in the doorway, mug still in her hands. "Drive safe," she said. I nodded, then hesitated. "Good night." She watched me all the way to the car. I told myself it was nothing, that I was reading into it, because that's what lonely people do. I didn't come back for weeks, but I started noticing my phone more at night. How quiet it was. How often I imagined it lighting up. 3 weeks later, just after midnight, my screen did light up. "Unknown number. I found something you left here. Thought you might want it back." I stared at the message, heart ticking too loud in my chest, already knowing what line I was about to cross, even before I typed back. I told myself I was only going back to get what I'd left. I even rehearsed the tone, casual, grateful, gone in 5 minutes. When I knocked, I already knew that wasn't true. She answered slower this time, hair pulled back, glasses on. Relief crossed her face before she smoothed it away. "Hey," she said. "Come in." On the kitchen table sat my charger, coiled neatly like it had been waiting. I laughed under my breath. I wondered where that went. "You're always losing things," she said, then stopped. "Saw the habit." She met her son. We both felt it. The room shifted a notch. She poured tea again without asking. The kettle clicked off. We stood there, shoulder to counter, listening to it cool. She asked how classes were going. I told her the truth. Fine, mostly. Then, because the quiet made room for it, I added, I switched majors last year. Didn't tell anyone for a while. She raised an eyebrow. Why not? I didn't want the questions. I watched steam curl from my mug. I wanted it to be mine first. She nodded like she understood that exact thing. "After my divorce," she said, then paused, thumb worrying the rim of her cup. I didn't tell people I was relieved. That felt like a bad word. So I said I was sad. That was easier. I didn't respond right away. The clock ticked. She didn't look at me when she said it. When she finally did, her eyes were steady, a little tired. I felt seen in a way that wasn't flattering, more accurate. The risk crept in around the edges. The age gap didn't need naming. It lived in the cabinets, the family photos turned face down on the sideboard. The fact that she was my friend's mother pressed in every time I said her name. Every time I didn't. I imagined explaining it to someone else and felt my stomach tighten. I imagined not explaining it at all and felt worse. She asked if I could help her with the smoke detector. It chirped at night, she said, and she was tired of standing on chairs. I held the ladder while she climbed, steadying it with one hand, my other hovering uselessly near her ankle. We worked in silence, passing the battery back and forth. When it finally stopped chirping, we both laughed, too relieved for the size of the problem. After, we sat at the table, mugs cooling. I folded the napkin again, then stopped myself. She noticed and smiled, small and private. You do that when you're thinking. Do what? That. She tapped the napkin. Our fingers brushed. She didn't pull away. We talked about nothing. A show she half-watched. A song on the radio that reminded her of a summer she couldn't quite place. Time slid. When I stood to leave, she walked me to the door again. This time, she reached out first, straightening the collar of my jacket. It was practical. It was unnecessary. Her hand lingered a second too long. Drive safe, she said. I will. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me and didn't look away. After that night, things didn't explode. They thinned. She stopped texting first. When I did, the replies came slower, shorter, like she was choosing each word with gloves on. I told myself that was normal. People got busy. Lives filled back up. Still, I started taking different routes home, just in case I passed her street without meaning to. The interruption came quietly. My friend mentioned her name like it was nothing. Mom says hi, he said one afternoon, grabbing a soda from my fridge. She asked if you ever figured out your major thing. My stomach tightened. Yeah, I said. Tell her thanks. He shrugged. She worries about people. Always has. That word, worries, sat wrong. It made the whole thing sound smaller than it felt. Or bigger. A week passed. Then another. I started assuming it had been a moment, nothing more. Something late night and lonely that faded in daylight. I practiced letting it go. I almost believed myself. Then one evening she called. Not a text. A call. I'm sorry, she said as soon as I answered. I shouldn't. Are you busy? I wasn't. I said I wasn't. Her voice sounded thinner than I remembered. Could you come by? Just for a minute. I told myself I was going to help with something practical. A box. A shelf. Anything with edges. When I arrived, the house was louder than usual, TV on low, lights bright. Defensive lighting. She didn't hug me. She didn't offer tea. She paced while explaining a problem with her phone, holding it out like evidence. I fixed it in seconds. The silence afterward stretched, awkward, unhelpful. You don't have to stay, she said. I nodded. Didn't move. She crossed her arms, then uncrossed them. Saturday. Stood again. Finally, she said, I think I need to be careful. I know, I said too quickly. She looked at me then. Really looked. Do you? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I understood everything she wasn't saying. Instead, I shrugged. I don't know what you want me to understand. Her mouth opened, closed. She laughed once, breathy. That's exactly the problem. A floorboard creaked upstairs. We both froze. Her son's door. Closed. Still, the reminder lingered. Who lived here? Who I was. She moved closer anyway. Not touching, just close enough that I could smell her soap. She reached out, then stopped, hand hovering between us like she'd forgotten what it was for. I shouldn't lean on you, she said softly. You're not. I'm not a kid, I said. Not angry, just honest. Her hand dropped. I didn't mean, I know. A pause. But I don't feel confused. That did it. She stepped back, putting the table between us. I do, she said. All the time. I should have left then. Instead, I walked around the table. Slowly. Gave her time to stop me. She didn't. We stood there, too close, not touching. Her eyes flicked to my mouth, then away. My hand lifted, hesitated, settled on the counter beside her. For a second, it felt inevitable. The quiet pulled tight. Our breaths synced. Then she turned her head, just enough. I can't, she whispered. I nodded, even as my chest burned. I stepped back. The moment broke, clean but painful. As I left, she didn't follow me to the door. That felt louder than anything we almost did. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It showed up on a weekday evening under a sky that couldn't decide if it wanted to rain. I ran into her at the park near her house, the one with the benches that faced the street, not the lake. I almost turned around. She saw me first. "Adam," she said, surprised. Not unhappy, just caught. She was walking alone, coat unbuttoned, hands in her pockets. I fell in a step beside her without asking. We didn't touch. We matched pace. The streetlights clicked on one by one like someone counting quietly. "I heard you went out with someone," she said after a minute. Too casual. Too late. I looked at her. "From who?" She smiled without humor. "Small town. I don't try very hard not to know things." "It wasn't a date," I said. Then after a beat, "I don't think." She nodded, eyes forward. "Good." The word landed heavier than it should have. We walked in silence. A car passed, spraying water onto the curb. She stepped closer to me without noticing. Or maybe she did. "I don't like who I am lately," she said suddenly. "I don't like how aware I feel. Of you." I stopped walking. She went a few steps ahead, then turned back. "I don't mean that the way it sounds," she added quickly. "Or maybe I do. I don't know anymore." We sat on the bench. Cold wood. Damp air. She folded her hands together, then pulled them apart like they'd been clasped too long. "I spent years being careful," she said. "For my marriage. For my son. For the version of myself other people were comfortable with." She exhaled. "And now I catch myself waiting for my phone to buzz. That scares me." I stared at my shoes. The wet pavement. The small crack near the curb I'd never noticed before. "I don't want to be something that scares you." She laughed softly. "You're not the something. You're the mirror." That felt too close to the truth. I leaned back, then forward again. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but it's not nothing. And pretending it is feels worse." She closed her eyes. Just for a second. When she opened them, they were glossy but steady. "If I let this keep going," she said, "I'm afraid I won't know how to stop." "Do you want to?" The question slipped out before I could shape it. She didn't answer. A jogger passed. Somewhere, a phone rang and stopped. She looked at me, then really looked like she was memorizing something she might not be allowed to keep. "I think about you more than I should," she said quietly. "I imagine conversations we haven't had. I replay the ones we have." A pause. That's already a line, isn't it? My chest felt tight. "I don't know where the lines are," I said. "I just know where you are." Her breath caught. She reached out, fingers brushing my sleeve, then froze. The space between us narrowed to nothing. I could feel the question in the air, heavy, waiting. She searched my face like she was asking something without words. If I moved closer, would either of us forgive ourselves? After the park, she disappeared. Not dramatically. No confrontation. No final look. Just a quiet rerouting of her life that left no space for me in it. Text stayed on read. Calls went unanswered. When I drove past her street, the porch light was off earlier than usual, like the house had learned a new habit. I told myself it was for the best. I said it enough times that it almost sounded true. A week later, my friend mentioned his dad. "He's back in town," he said like it was trivia, "helping Mom with some paperwork. They're being civil." Weird, right? The word civil landed hard. I nodded, stared at my coffee until it went cold. I hadn't known he'd be back. She hadn't said a word. That omission felt deliberate. Suddenly, everything rearranged itself. Her distance, the careful silence, the way she'd said she didn't like who she was becoming. I pictured them in the same kitchen where she'd poured me tea, talking about things I'd never hear. I imagined her choosing stability, choosing history, choosing correctly. I stopped going by her house. I stopped taking the long way home. I deleted a draft text that started with "I get it" and ended nowhere. The quiet stretched, elastic and exhausting. Then I ran into her at the grocery store. She was in the produce aisle, comparing apples like it mattered. Hair down. No glasses. She looked up and froze. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she smiled, polite, practiced. "Hi," she said. We stood there, carts between us like boundaries we hadn't agreed on, but respected anyway. She asked how school was. I asked how she'd been. We both lied lightly. "I've been busy," she said, adjusting her grip on the cart. Family stuff. Yeah, I said. I heard. Her jaw tightened just a little. I should have told you. It's okay. It wasn't, but I didn't want to be another thing she had to manage. She glanced down the aisle, then back at me. You look tired. I shrugged. Probably just adjusting. She nodded, like she understood what that word carried. There was so much unsaid between us it felt louder than the store's music. I noticed her hands. No ring. Still, that didn't mean anything. Or it meant everything. I should go, she said finally. Yeah. She hesitated, then reached into her bag and pulled out my charger. The same one. You left this again. At the park bench. I think you dropped it. I took it, our fingers brushing briefly. The contact sparked and faded. She stepped back immediately, like she'd touched a hot surface. Take care, she said. You too. She walked away without looking back. I stood there longer than necessary, staring at the apples she hadn't chosen. That night, I typed a message, deleted it, typed another. I don't need answers. I just don't want to be erased. I didn't send it. I set my phone face down on the bed and watched the ceiling fan spin. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. Somewhere a space stayed open. I wasn't sure if it was waiting or closing. The moment came back to the kitchen, not because it was symbolic, because it was where things had always been simplest. Cups, countertops, the clock that never learned how to whisper. She called after midnight. Again, this time she didn't apologize for it. I need to return something, she said. Her voice was steady, but thin around the edges. Can you come by? I went. The house felt different. Fewer lights. No TV noise, pretending to be company. She stood by the counter when I walked in, hands flat against it, like she was grounding herself. My charger sat between us. A small excuse. A large one. Thank you for coming, she said. Of course. We didn't move for a while. The kettle was already hot. She didn't turn it on. She didn't offer tea. That felt intentional. I should have handled this better, she said finally. I thought distance would make it disappear. And I asked. She shook her head. It just made it quieter, not smaller. I nodded. I'd learned the same thing. She looked at me then, really looked like she was tired of pretending she hadn't memorized my face. I'm not confused about how I feel, she said. I'm confused about what I'm allowed to do with it. That's different, I said. Yes, she agreed softly. And that's why this has to stop here. The words landed cleanly. They hurt anyway. I don't regret knowing you, she continued. That's what scared me. How easy it was to let you see parts of me I'd packed away. She paused, eyes shining but controlled. You made me feel awake, and I can't build a life on that feeling alone. I leaned against the counter across from her. I never wanted to be a disruption, I said. I just didn't want to be invisible. You weren't, she said immediately. Too quickly. Then she softened. You aren't. Silence again. The clock filled it. The refrigerator hummed. Ordinary sounds, doing their jobs. I need to choose my son, she said. And myself. The version that doesn't look back and wonder when she crossed something she can't uncross. I swallowed. I get that. She exhaled like she'd been holding that breath for weeks. She reached out, not toward me, but toward the charger, pushing it closer. Her hand brushed mine anyway. This time, she didn't pull back right away. I'm sorry, she said. I know, I replied. We stood there close enough to feel the warmth, far enough to keep it contained. The almost of it pressed in from all sides. There was a version of the night where I leaned in, where she didn't stop me, where everything tipped. Instead, I stepped back. That's the right choice, I said. Not bravely, just honestly. Her shoulders dropped, like something heavy had been set down. She nodded. Once. At the door, she hesitated, turned, looked at me like she wanted to say something else. Then she smiled, small, tired real. Take care of yourself, she said. You too. She opened the door. I paused on the threshold. Okay. I asked. She met my eyes. Okay. And that was it. No keys. No promise. Just two people choosing not to make it harder than it already was. Time did what neither of us could. It moved things just enough. Weeks passed. Then months. Life didn't reset. It adjusted. I finished the semester. Changed my routine. Started going to the cafe on the corner at 8:47 a.m. The one with the cracked window, and the barista who never asked questions. Black coffee. Always black. I learned to sit with myself again. The pauses softened. We didn't speak at first. Not out of discipline, just respect. The kind that grows when something mattered and you don't want to bruise it by revisiting too soon. Then one morning, she was there. Same cafe. Same bench outside, damp from an early drizzle. She was holding a paper cup with both hands like she used to with her tea. When she saw me, she didn't look surprised. Just relieved. "Hi," she said. That was it. No rush to explain the months. No apology tour. We sat. The city moved around us. Someone laughed too loud inside. A bus hissed to a stop. She told me her son had moved out. Not far, just enough. She said it casually, but her eyes searched my face when she did. I nodded, careful. "I started volunteering at the library," she added. "Turns out I like quiet places where no one expects anything from me." I smiled. "That tracks." She laughed. Softer than before. Healthier. We didn't touch. Not then. We talked about small things. Books. A show neither of us finished. How tea tastes different when someone else makes it. She said she still sets the kettle out of habit, even when she doesn't use it. "I still fold napkins," I admitted. She shook her head. I noticed. After that, it became normal. Not dramatic, intentional. Walks that ended on the same bench. Mornings that started with coffee and nowhere to be. We learned each other again, slower this time, without the static of secrecy, without fear rushing us forward. One night, months later, I was back in her kitchen. The clock still ticked too loud. The light was still yellow, but the air felt different, earned. She handed me a mug. Tea for her. Coffee for me. We stood close, not careful anymore, just honest. "This is okay," she said, not asking. "It is," I replied. She rested her head briefly against my shoulder. "No fireworks. Just wait. Just warmth." Life didn't become perfect. Some days were quiet in the wrong way. Some mornings we missed each other even while standing in the same room. But it was grounded, real, chosen. Sometimes we sit on that bench and say nothing at all. Sometimes that's enough. And when the clock hits 8:47, we always look at each other because we both know exactly when everything finally felt like it could begin.